Hello and welcome to another episode of Gear Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I am so glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me. It means a lot. Today we're looking at a knife from real steel and it is an amazing knife. I am pretty obsessed with this knife at the moment. It is the Gslip and this particular one is the KnifeCenter exclusive in natural micarta. And that handle material is what makes it the KnifeCenter exclusive. Standard real steel cardboard box, comes with a microfiber cloth, some paperwork. So there's the box, and here is the knife, the Gslip from real steel. It's a slip joint, it's non-locking. And before we get into it, let's just take a moment to look at this knife and appreciate its natural beauty, because I think this thing is just a damn sexy knife. So we got a nice drop point blade, as you can see, a nice satin finish, a wicked sharp edge. I mean, this thing is a laser, super thin. We've got our designer. He also designed the G5 Metamorph blade steel. And let's look at these handles. Let's just appreciate that micarta. How killer is that? It looks so good. That wire clip is totally doing it for me. Yeah, I am a huge fan of this knife. Pretty much everything about it, I am loving. So let's get the short version out of the way for those of you that are in a hurry, and then we'll talk in a little more detail. So the short version is going to be pretty straightforward. We're looking at a non-locking slip joint that does have a pocket clip, as we saw. For tip-up carry, either right or left-handed, it is swappable. The handle material in this example is micarta. The blade steel is VG10, and the cost, $39.95. Shut the front door, dead serious, $39.95. Now, having said that, depending on when you're watching this, that price may have changed. When they released these, at least this KnifeCenter exclusive, that was kind of the introductory price for this knife. The standard price, I believe, is going to be $60 or somewhere in that range. And at $60, this is still an incredible value. An incredible value at $60. But as of filming this, which is January 1st of 2020, New Year's Day, these are $40. Which is a stupid, crazy value, and I can't even believe it, so of course I had to have one. They do also come in some G10 options, I think black G10, I think there's a yellow G10 as well, and from looking at their Instagram account, it looks as though they have a few other micarta variations that may be coming in the future. It looks like a green micarta, one that looked like a burgundy color, and possibly even a black. So I'm guessing those might all be exclusives to different distributors, but I'm not entirely sure. But this is the first one that I saw, the first one that was available to purchase. I snatched it up and I could not be happier because this thing kicks ass. So let's talk about some basic specs as far as blade length and handle length and all that fun stuff. So overall length is basically 8 inches, just a hair under 8 inches. So for a slip joint, it's on the large side, and we'll do some size comparisons here in just a couple of seconds. Your blade length is going to be 1, 2, 3, and just under a half. So it's like 3.46 is what they advertise of actual cutting edge. And again, it's a laser. It's super thin. It's good. It's good stuff, you guys. Handle length, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and just under 4.5. So that's the handle length. The weight on this guy is 2.5 ounces. 2.4 is what I got on my scale. So not a heavy knife, but for a slip joint, it's on the big side for sure. So let's do a couple size comparisons. Here is a Victorinox. This is a Pioneer. So you can see the size difference there. Obviously much larger than the Pioneer. Here's another kind of modern slip joint. This is a Lion Steel Shuffler. Significantly smaller than the Gslip. And here's another one. This is a, I think, a pretty good comparison. This is from Boker, the Urban Trapper. Pretty similar in overall length. The Urban Trapper is a little shorter, just a little bit, but the blade lengths are very similar. They've kind of got a similar aesthetic, so that's a pretty good comparison, I think, with the full-size Boker Urban Trapper. And then, as we always do, we can't forget about the Ontario Rat number 1 and baby brother Rat number 2, the Gslip. Lands basically right in between the two at about 8 inches overall, which, as I've said in the past, I think 8 inches overall is a pretty good sweet spot for an EDC knife. So yeah, for a slip joint, it's definitely on the long side, but that's kind of what drew me to it. Is it's different. You know, if this was a tiny little knife, I still totally would have bought it, but I just thought it was interesting that we kind of had a good size slip joint with some actual reach to it. So totally digging that. So let's look at the blade a little more closely. As we said, the blade steel is VG10. That satin finish looks really excellent. They did a great job. They really did. This fuller / nail nick, whatever whatever you would call that. I'm sure there's probably a proper term for that type of nail nick / fuller. If you know what it's called, you can put that in the comments. But it looks fantastic. Just a nice classic clean drop point. Again, Ostap Hell, the designer who did design the G5 Metamorph, which was a crazy hot seller for real steel. He designed this knife. It's got an oversized pivot, which is just decorative. I personally would prefer something smaller, but that's just my preference. I still think it looks really nice, so no real issue there. And the handle scales, as we looked at earlier, are just beautiful. The fit is pretty good. It's almost perfect with the back spring to the handle scales. You do have a tiny little pin back here to run a lanyard. So if you want to run some cordage through there, you could actually run a lanyard on this guy. The pocket clip is going to be one obvious feature that's going to set this apart from other slip joints. There are slip joints that have pocket clips, but it's not super common. And so to have a really nice wire clip, I love wire clips. Spyderco is the one brand that would come to mind, I think, for most people. It's one of my preferred pocket clips, and they really executed this one well. And as I mentioned, that is swappable to the other side for tip-up left-handed carry. This also does have a stop. It has a 3/4 stop. And the pull on this is pretty light. I'd say 4.5 or 5 out of 10. 3/4 stop, all the way open, snaps into place with authority. And if you happen to accidentally put too much pressure on the blade, it's got that 3/4 stop. So it's not going to come down and bite your finger like something with a half stop could potentially do. Like this Lion Steel, for example, it has a half stop. So if I'm choked up all the way on this thing and it closes, it could potentially bite me because it stops halfway. So I do like the 3/4 stop. I think it's wise. I would be fine with no stop, but if you're going to put one, I think on a knife this size, with this design, I think the 3/4 stop was a good idea. So it makes it super easy to close. You can open this one-handed, so you can kind of pinch this fuller here with your middle finger and your thumb and kind of get it started and then just kind of roll it open. So technically you can get this thing open one-handed, and then of course you can certainly close it one-handed. The centering is pretty good. Sometimes it'll move off to the side, as you can see it is right now. And if I push on the blade, it centers up. So no real issue there. The finish and kind of final execution, as far as putting this thing together, I think they did a really good job. The micarta has a great texture. It's finished nicely. The back spring is polished up nice. All the finishes are just really excellent. And again, this blade is an absolute laser. It is killer for food prep. I was cutting up some strawberries and blueberries and apples for my son, and this thing was just going through them like butter because it is quite a thin blade stock to begin with. It comes down to a pretty thin edge, and it's an absolute laser. Here's some paperwork. This actually came with the knife. Let's do that again. Just listen to that sound. This thing is stupid sharp. And that's after 3 days? 3 days of use. I mean, like, this is just fun for me at this point to be playing this thing and making little curls. It's stupid how sharp this thing is. I love it. I love everything about it. So if you like non-locking knives, if you like slip joints, if you're into micarta, this is a knife that you're probably going to want just for the micarta because it looks so good. It's going to pick up some color and patina over time as you get oils from your hands on the micarta. It's just going to look excellent, and it functions really nicely, performs so well. And I'm really hoping that I can get my hands on some more of these, especially in these micarta variants, because I think they're just super classic. So yeah, it's a modern slip joint, or a modern traditional. Some people really kind of shy away from these. Other people are really into them. I'm a big fan. I am a big fan. So if you like non-locking knives, or maybe you live somewhere that doesn't permit knives that lock, this could be an option. But again, keep in mind the blade length is pretty long, right? We're talking just under 3.5 inches. So for legality purposes, the fact that it doesn't lock may work for you, but the blade length could be too long. And again, this knife technically can be opened with one hand if you've got enough kind of dexterity and strength in your fingers. So that is it. That is the Gslip from Real Steel. I think it's a steal at $40. So if you can find this on KnifeCenter for $39.95, I think you should try to snag one. But again, even at $60, I think you're doing pretty good. So that's it. That's the Gslip from Real Steel. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will talk to you soon.